Hi, this is Evelyn Lopez. Welcome to Sustainability in Your Ear, the Earth911.com podcast for the week of May 27th, 2019. We are recording at the lovely Lanyards recording studio in Tacoma, Washington, which,
Lanyards,
by the way, Doug, has the most lovely green maple tree in the backyard. It's like the perfect spring green. And today we're getting ready for World Environment Day. So that is pretty darn exciting. Welcome to our participants. And today we're a little short-staffed. Mitch, Ratcliffe, our Earth911 publisher, is with us. But we don't have any writers today because they had some conflicts. But Mitch, what's new with you?
Well, Earth911 is churning up a very exciting summer. On World Environment Day, you will be seeing an announcement that we're doing with a partner. I can't say anything about it before World Environment Day, and this will air before then, but it'll be an exciting new way to access Earth911 recycling information. We're also about to relaunch the iRecycle app for both iOS and Android. So our search app that allows you to check wherever you are, what you can recycle and where you can recycle. It'll be back in the app stores shortly. So we're feeling good about what's going on this summer.
That's great. That's wonderful. We'll be really eager to hear that announcement on Earth Day. I'm going to have trouble with that all day. World Environment Day, which is going to be on June 5th. And speaking of World Environment Day, this year World Environment Day focuses on air pollution. It will be celebrated on June 5th, but the organizers would like you to get ready for it. So, according to the website, and the website is www.worldenvironmentday.global, 9 out of 10 people breathe polluted air. Mm-hmm. So, from the 24th of May through World Environment Day on June 5th, they are asking everyone to join the Mask Challenge. Face masks are a great symbol to show leaders that we want to breathe clean air. Alongside celebrities, influencers, and creators, the World Environment Day invites everyone to decide what they're going to do to work on air pollution, but also make a mask. The goal is, wear a face mask, make a face mask, and then post your picture in a face mask on social media with the hashtags World Environment Day and hashtag Beat Air Pollution. And also don't forget to tag the Twitter site, at UN Environment. So that's a lot to do. What are you going to do, Mitch?
I am going to wear a mask and I'm going to post it online. I'm also I just switched to a hybrid, actually to an electric vehicle. So I'm in the midst of really loving that experience.
Are you?
In 4 months now, I've spent $5.20 on backup gasoline for the tiny little BMW engine that's in the front of that car when you run out of juice. And it's an absolute joy.
That's nice. Well, and you have been occasionally over the last several months having meetings up in Bellevue, Washington, which is a good, hour commute from where we're located. How has it been on the freeways?
It's been, actually it's about 2 hours.
But to be realistic, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the two things I was worried about were the range when I bought it, because the BMW i3 has a range of about 70 miles.
Yeah, that would always be kind of a little worrying for me.
Yeah, and this is a 42-mile commute each way, roughly. And I wondered whether I would make it. I have never had a problem. Even on days when I could not get a charge in Bellevue, I have been able to get home just fine.
Oh, interesting.
And the other was the kind of feeling exposed. I used to drive a larger car, and I never worried about somebody crashing into me, but I worried about it a little bit in this carbon fiber, super light vehicle. But it also handles so well that I don't feel trapped, and that would have been the bad experience. It has not come to pass, and I just think it's great. So, having embraced the electric vehicle last year, I got rid of all the two-stroke engines in my house. So the lawnmower, the blowers, all those things. I'm looking this year at what to do for the next 10 years. And we're preparing on Earth911 a 10-year planning tool that will allow you to, as you want to take on various aspects of reducing your footprint, do so in your own way, in your own order. But if you were to follow this program over the course of 10 years, we were hoping to get you to reduce your total carbon footprint, water footprint, and so forth by about 80%.
Wow.
So, the goal for the site is to provide you all the how-tos, but also some sort of structure for keeping track of how well you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be really interesting. My goals for this year were to look into solar panels for the house, which I have to admit, it's almost June. I have not done that, so I need to get on it. And the second was to try out more plant-based meal options. Mm-hmm. And we've been pretty successful at doing that, both because, we've just sort of decided that it would be good for us to get more vegetables into our diet and reduce our meat consumption. And then there are luckily a couple of vegan restaurants in Tacoma that we've tried out, and they are actually pretty good. I will say this, and this is a story we're going to cover today too. I had a plant mac and cheese, so the cheese mm-hmm. was sort of I don't know if they were using the brewer's yeast type of yeast in it or something else, but it was good. It was like a really good casserole. I wouldn't call it quite mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese,
yes. Yeah, but it was very acceptable. It was a very tasty meal.
Well, I was in Washington, D.C. last week and ate at a restaurant called Founding Farmers, which mm-hmm. was spectacular. Organic food, but served in such large portions that I felt like I was creating food waste.
Oh, really?
And so I pointed that out to the server after we got done. I said, this salad was so large, I could not eat all of it and my entree. And he said, oh, well, we compost.
Oh, that's something. That's good.
It's something. But I also felt like we needed to go a little further and maybe have smaller portions in restaurants, too.
I've noticed a number of restaurants, and they are usually the ones that serve, really big sort of bar meals, mm-hmm. that a lot of them now do have a half-size option. And that's always kind of nice because then not only is that reducing your cost, but it also generally gives you something that's a little bit more reasonably sized.
Yeah, and the thing that I've also done is I've cut meat out at lunch, mm-hmm. And that I think has made a big difference, both in how I feel and particularly because we focused on. I used to eat a lot of lamb.
Oh, interesting.
And lamb is really one of the more carbon intensive meats, so I have cut that one out entirely.
I did not realize that. I think of beef as being the main culprit.
There are studies that show lamb is actually higher.
Interesting. How very interesting. Well, some of the things that the website for World Environment Day suggests are some of the things we've been talking about there. Things like use public transport or car sharing, or cycle or walk, switch to a hybrid or electric vehicle, which you've already done. Turn off the car engine when stationary. And this one I think is really hard to know when to do this. I see a lot of parents lined up to pick up their kids after school, mm-hmm. and some of the engines are off and some of the engines are on, and I think it's probably because they have a little bit of a hard time figuring out how long they're going to be sitting there.
Well, the nice thing about an electric vehicle or a hybrid is it turns itself off when it's not in motion. So get the car and you don't even have to worry about that.
Then you've got two of these suggestions at once. The other suggestions are reduce your consumption of meat and dairy to help cut methane emissions, mm-hmm. compost organic food items and recycle non-organic trash, which we're all into, switch to high-efficiency home heating systems and equipment, and that's where my continual desire to look into solar comes into play. Save energy, turn off lights and electronics when not in use, and choose non-toxic paints and furnishings. So we thought we'd talk about a couple of these because we have some really good articles up on the Earth911 website right now. And the first was switching to high-efficiency home heating systems and equipment. There's a great story on the top solar panels and a guide to those that our writer Sarah Lozanova wrote. And Mitch, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, this is one of our new conscious shopping guides, so the best solar panels. And the way that we rank these are a combination of how much they output for the money, the protection the warranty provides, and and the supply chain. So how much carbon was produced not only in making the solar panels, but bringing them to the customer. So there's a number of different variables that we included, and you can see our top 10 choices. But mm-hmm. the things that we wanted to look at, and I think these are the most important of many points that we discussed, are the long-term capacity. That is the warranty you're going to get, that the the panel will continue to produce a given percentage of power versus new, because older photovoltaic cells have tended to lose about 10% of their generation ability annually.
Well, this is quite an interesting thing, because this is not an aspect of solar that I had ever really thought about, that, over time the efficiency might dwindle to such an extent that, you really need to look at replacing it.
And it makes a big difference because SunPower and Solaria are two of the companies on our list. They offer a 25-year warranty. And Trina, which is another of our list participants, is a 10-year warranty. So, they clearly don't have the confidence that this is going to continue to produce 90 or even 80% of of the power that it would when purchased new. So that's a question everybody should ask is, what's the warranty on this, and what does it warrant I will get in terms of production over the next however long you're going to own the roof. Right. And then don't forget that also translates into value when you sell or dispose of your home in any way. I mean, if you can turn around and say, hey, our solar is still good enough that you will not need to buy power, that's going to add $40,000 or $50,000 to a home's value.
Yeah, it's interesting, too. I'm looking down. There's a handy chart at the bottom that talks about all of the factors, including price. And so, like SunPower is, the 25-year product warranty is highly desirable, but it does look like it's on the top end of the price scale. Whereas,
at the very top.
Yeah, whereas the Trina solar, which has only got the warranty for 10 years, looks like it is one of the least expensive.
And part of that's because of the solar voltaic industry score that has to do with how toxic and how carbon intensive the production is. So SunPower scores a 98 out of 100, and Trina scores 95 out of 100. The next closest is 77. So even though Trina has a shorter warranty and comes from China, so it's produced overseas, while SunPower uses a combination of U.S. and Mexican and Philippine components. You're paying a little more for a longer-lasting photovoltaic cell. But Trina is definitely a good deal.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's sort of like if the price is such a barrier that you're thinking, gee, I just can't do solar right now, you might really reconsider whether the 10-year warranty, that would take you 10 years down the line would be enough to get you into solar.
Well, and it's also a little confusing. I mean, if you look at the chart, Trina has a 25-year production warranty and a product warranty of 10 years.
Okay.
But so what they're saying is in 25 years, you'll be getting 80.7% of the power you would get on day one. Now, by contrast, SunPower is at 92, so you can see 12% better.
Yeah, but that 80% is pretty good, especially if the price is something that you can more easily manage.
The other thing to look at is the efficiency, and that is what percentage of the solar energy that is falling on the cell is converted into power. SunPower is up at 22.2%, which is very near the maximum commercial capacity right now. Trina, again, and not to knock them, is at 16.5.
Right,
so it's a little older technology.
Yeah, interesting.
But that's also why it's less expensive.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Do you know, I have no idea, so if you don't happen to know this, since I know you didn't do all of this research yourself, but when you do hit a point where you're starting to think, gee, my solar panels are just not as efficient as I want them to be, is there a way to just replace the cells, or do you have to replace the whole panel and sort of start from scratch?
Essentially, the panel and the cells are one thing.
Okay. So it's not like a light bulb.
Panels you get, which could be the traditional panels that are roughly an inch thick and 3 feet by 3 feet in size. Or it could be just a tile on your roof. Which is where we're headed, is normal looking roofs that have solar built into it. Tesla makes one of these. I am not endorsing Tesla.
Right.
I've got an Elon problem. But there are others as well. In that case, if you have a shingle that goes out, you just replace the shingle, and it plugs back into the little grid that is your roof.
And that would be nice.
To generate power.
Yeah. Yeah, I have not seen any pictures of the Tesla roofs. I've read a couple of stories describing them, but I don't know whether they're really fully available.
They're lovely.
Are they available?
They're also extremely expensive.
Oh, okay.
They are like the cars, a luxury item.
Okay. That's probably not on my list then.
And the other thing about it is the Tesla battery is also quite expensive. There are a lot of cheaper options.
Interesting. So that is I'm still going to do it. I just need to actually call some providers and set up some time to talk to people. Interestingly, a couple of my neighbors have said, oh, hey, when you call, can you let us know too? Maybe we can get in on it too. So maybe there's a way I can see if more people on my street want to do this and see if we can get some discounted activity that way.
Right. So if you can bring 2 or 3 in, I bet you can get a 10 or 20% discount across the whole group.
Well, it seemed reasonable and be very efficient for them too if they can just go from house to house. Well, we also have a really interesting article on the website and this is sort of in response to the suggestion that you reduce your consumption of meat and dairy to help cut methane emissions. We have a story from Patty Roth that has 5 vegan mac and cheese recipes that she has pulled together. And I don't know if she has tried them on her own yet, but it has all of the ingredients and sort of a description of what makes these special or different from some of the others. And they look very interesting.
Yeah, this is a contest that was held by a group for a group of chefs in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, held by the Animal Hero Kids Mac and Cheese Challenge to Save the Earth. Here's a mouthful. And so what we have are the 5 winning chefs, actually 4 winning chefs and an additional chef who we had a great recipe from. And you can see the pictures of each of the winning chefs and their dishes. And it's interesting. They're all vegan, and they each took different approaches to making the mac and cheesy. Some of them are using kind of deconstructed mac and cheese. So, the different textures and sauces are separate in the dish. Others are mashing it all up just like mac and cheese. So you'll find amongst this set of recipes something you like. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I think so too. It looks really interesting. Well, and I notice a lot of the recipes, as their milk or dairy substitute, will use a nut milk. One of them uses almond milk. The other one uses macadamia milk. And I'm wondering, we had that innovator interview with the
Ripple.
Ripple. Yeah, and I haven't found it yet, but I've been very interested in that since that sounded like it was sort of a richer dairy substitute and also a little bit more of a less intensive water user than some of the nut milks.
Much less so. So almond milk is water intensive to the same degree that beef is. Literally thousands of gallons of water for a single bottle of almond milk. Pea milk, on the other hand, uses 10% of the water that almond does. So it's a much better choice. And when we were talking with Adam from Ripple, the founder, he mentioned that they have a growing list of recipes. And one of the things we're doing is trying to get some of those recipes into the site so you can refer to them. But it'd be great if you could have a wide range of choices of different non-dairy milks and associated recipes to choose from.
I think so too, because it would give you, I think if I was baking, I might like to use a nut milk because a little bit of the nuttiness might be kind of an interesting asset. But yeah, for mac and cheese, I think maybe using the pea or legume-based milk would be a good option. Well, I highly recommend this story. And as I say, I haven't tried any of these, but I am very interested. Unfortunately, it's just me and my husband, so if I make like some big old dish of food, it can sometimes be a little bit difficult to get to all the leftovers.
Well, there's that 4th of July party.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Surprise everyone with vegan mac and cheese and see how that works out for you. Huh.
So it's just an aside, but on our newsletter, we included the mac and cheese recipes, and we had more spam complaints about that particular mail than any mail we've ever sent.
Really?
Yeah. So we were trying to figure out, was it the mac and cheese?
Huh. Well, that's kind of that. I doubt it. I doubt it, to be honest. But, I think I remember you saying that when we've done stories, when we've done podcasts and stories on sort of vegan food and trying out vegetarian options, those tend to be very popular.
They do. It was just a funny thing. We noticed it on Monday. We sent this out on Saturday, and it was just a real spike. And we believe it had to do with the mac and cheese because that was the lead article.
That's so funny. That's very interesting.
Who knows? Who
knows?
And folks, if you have opinions about that, please share it at feedback@Earth911.com. We'd love to hear what you think we should be doing because it'll help us.
Absolutely. Well, and the last category of stories I thought we'd talk about is not technically on the list, but kind of all about the list, and that is that what the World Environment Day is saying is get out there and get involved. Wear a mask, be counted, make it clear that the environment and air pollution, which is their focus this year, is something that everyone really cares about and wants to see some work on. And so with that, we have a couple of stories up on the Earth911 website about millennial politics and climate change, and also a story indicating that the biggest danger, well, it's not really a story, it's a sort of a graphic. The biggest danger to our future is apathy. So what are your thoughts on that?
So let's take the apathy one first. So we have been, on Fridays, we've introduced a series of posters. They're inspirational posters. And the one that you're referring to is a Jane Goodall quote, "The greatest danger to our future is apathy."
Right.
And what we want to be able to do is give people meme quality information that they can share with people to get others thinking about how the world is changing and how they can impact the changing world. So we hope these are beautiful, that they're inspiring, and that there's something that maybe you put on your desktop or I don't know about printing out and putting on the wall, but if you're going to do that in a way that's not wasteful, go for it. Because every time we remind people that there are positive useful things they can do on a daily basis, we're starting the motion towards a sustainable economy. So this is where we wanted to start, is providing some inspiration, tying you back to some great thinkers of the past. And so we have quotes from everything from the Bible to Jane Goodall and for those of you like me, Kurt Vonnegut.
Perfect.
So, and then on the political front, and this is really, it's always hard to talk about this as not a millennial because it sounds like you're talking down or an uninformed way about them, and that is not what we want to be doing. So millennials are people who were born between 1981, essentially when Reagan was sworn in, through 1996. What happened in 1996 that changed everything? The commercial internet came into its own in 1995. Everybody started to get computers at home. And so the next generation, Generation Z, starts in 96 and was raised, and this is the phrase, digitally native.
Oh, yeah.
So
okay.
The millennial was growing up as we were making the transition from newspapers to digital. The kids who came after them have never known anything other than digital.
Well, Mitch, when were your kids born?
93 and 95. So both of them are technically millennials. Yeah.
Because I don't have kids, but I would have probably had them, likely somewhere in this range given my age. And I graduated from high school in 1980.
Well, I was 79, so.
Yeah. And you can kind of see it because as someone in the parent generation, so when we were in high school, you had typewriters. That was it. When we were in college, I had a typewriter too. There were computers that existed, but they weren't desktops. Now, when I went to law school in 1985, I did have a PC on my desk, but it was not connected to anything. You had to load in the software that you were going to use to write a brief or write something. It was a standalone completely. So, going from, and I'll talk to younger people and I'll say things that make they're horrible, like old grandma things. And I'll say things like, yeah, but when I was in school, we didn't have email. We didn't
have to walk uphill through broken glass.
I mean, we didn't have that. Like, the professors and the teachers couldn't give us assignments. They would tape a piece of paper to their office door Or they would write it in the corner of the blackboard and we'd have to write down. I mean, it's completely different. It's like saying, we took the wagon train out west.
Well, that's an interesting thing to think about because we're going through this revolution in perception about how we affect the environment. But we're doing it on the heels of a change that is as radical as the Industrial Revolution. And we're only 40 years into it.
Yeah.
I was interviewed on another podcast recently, and they were saying, well, this has been going on for a long time. But no, it hasn't really. Computers started to come into their own in the late 70s in terms of, somebody might be able to buy one, an Apple II or a PC. And or an Atari, actually. PCs came later.
Oh, yeah.
And that is like, okay, so that was 1979 or 80. It is 2019. It's the difference between 1880 and 1921. And think about everything that happened in that period of time. That the West closed. There was no more unsettled territory, supposedly. Very subjective way of putting it.
Right.
We have introduced radio, television, mass newspapers in that same period. We've done the same here. We went from no digital to completely digital. And my kids were actually raised like Gen Z because I put a very fast internet connection into my house in 1993 because I was a tech journalist and wanted to understand how life would change. So my kids never watched TV. They've only been online. Since they were very young and have a different ethos about the way that they interact with the world. They do a lot of research before they buy. And that's where the next story we're talking about comes back into this. There's a lot of political indifference and activity growing amongst millennial and Gen Z folks because they both have lost faith in the way our politics work and are critically concerned about global climate change.
Right.
And so they both don't have a political mechanism to use. They have to invent one. And you see experimentation by folks like Anastasia. I always get her name wrong.
Oh, Alexandria
Ocasio-Cortez. Cortez. Or Beto O'Rourke, who are both running primarily on climate change issues right now. Cortez is not running for president.
Right.
But the kids have started to do things. They went on a strike recently, just did not show up to school for climate strike, which was on March 15th. And this happened all over the world. Just skipped school and took part in this protest. The Green New Deal was announced. And we did a show about the various aspects of the Green New Deal a while back, which we'll repost one of these days soon. But there's a company or a site called The Tilt, and this is TYLT, and they survey millennials and Gen Z, and they found some interesting things about their perception of the world. One is 35% of them don't believe having children is morally responsible in a world enduring climate change. That has profound impacts on the future of our economy and our country, every country. Because we are now looking at an actual decline in population potentially. That'll change everything in terms of the value of work and assets. But they also said that 70% of them said that they consider climate change more important than terrorism. 54% said it's more important than healthcare. 65% of them won't use plastic bags. 54% are changing their diet to help save the planet, like we were talking about before. And then there's 60% say they've switched to a zero waste lifestyle. We don't know exactly what that means, but that's great intention.
Yeah.
And if we're thinking about what we are going to do going forward, we need a new mechanism for the conversation because we all have to pull together. And this is one of the, like I said earlier, we shouldn't just talk about millennials like they're someone else.
Right.
They're part of us too. We should, and if we say they're different and we're not going to understand one another, it's also like how we treat nature. Like it's not, like we're not part of it and it's not part of us. And it is. And so we need to a big tent kind of a movement around climate change.
Well, it's actually it's fascinating to me because when we also talk about we're talking about the generation that's in power, and that still is the baby boomers, maybe some of the end of the baby boomers. And let me tell you, and I'm sort of, you and I both are the very end of the baby boomers.
Yeah, we're tailors.
Yeah, very tailors. I mean, I think probably, have more in common with Gen X in some ways. But the baby boomers, I mean, they are hanging on by their bleeding fingernails, right? I mean, they do not want to let go of power. They are, I mean, this is why you see people who are saying, I think it's fine to be president when you're 70. I think it's great. Maybe you could be 80 and be president. And I'm thinking, come on, guys. I mean, I'm 57 this year, and I can tell you it's different than 40. So I can't even imagine trying to, be up on everything in another 30 years. But that's the baby boomer way. I mean, it's sort of like, hey, the world depends on me. I'm the central figure in my narrative, and I am not about to. And so the way I look at things is the norm. And you young whippersnappers who look at things differently are just very confusing. But, they're the majority now. I mean, the baby boomers are not anymore. They were a significant population. And these younger kids, I mean, the things they're reacting to, it's perfectly logical with what they see in their lives that they're thinking, you guys are still kind of war obsessed, and we're looking around us realizing that is not the big issue.
And so but what I think we're doing is that we're spreading a new way of living. It isn't necessarily perfectly generational, although generations are the things that express the change.
Yeah, you see it that way. Yeah.
I was flying back from D.C. Last week, and I was sitting next to a gentleman, older black man. We were talking, and he at one point said, well, I'm 90. Guy did not look 90.
Right.
He looked 65 or 70. And I said, really? And what do you do? And he still works. He still works on multiple different things. And that's also where labor is going. So there's a lot of people who have already started to live the way that we're going to live in the future, where you have fractional jobs.
Right.
And this is not just the gig economy. This is happening at senior levels too. We're embracing new lifestyles, and it's smeared across the generations. But we have to collect all this good intelligence and bring it back to folks so they can make similar decisions or make different decisions with good information. Yes.
But I also think that this change, any period of change is disruptive. And I think that this is why we're also seeing, those people who like things to be more predictable and more traditional and value sort of the way things have been are feeling unhappy and worried. And I think we're seeing in some of the policies we're seeing nationally that kind of reaction of, let's go back to the way it was when I was a kid and things were better. Now, truthfully, it really depends on who you are. Maybe they weren't better at all. They certainly weren't better for everyone. But that's that impulse. And I kind of think we don't really, on either side of the political spectrum, kind of take the time to understand where the other side's coming from. So, the millennials, the Gen Zers, the ones who are worried about the environment, it's not a put on. I mean, they are seriously worried.
And with absolutely good reasons.
Yeah. And we should take it seriously and work with them. It'll make us better if we do.
Well, if it's the political cause of their generation, I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. That brings us to some Earthling questions. And our first one, Beth in Ashburn, Virginia, asks, I'm looking for a way to recycle conference lanyards. Any ideas?
Okay, so conference lanyards, for those of you who don't go to conferences, are those nylon or rayon bands you wear around your neck with a clip at the end. And nylon and rayon, of course, are made from plastic, made from petroleum. They can be made from recycled materials, and we would certainly urge Beth to send a note to whatever conference she's attending, say, hey, please be sure to use recycled materials in your lanyards. Now, can you recycle them? That's very difficult to say because the lanyards are often made of different materials, and they're not identified. You don't find a label on it that says this is made of rayon, for instance.
Right.
So it's probably better to reuse them. And you can do a lot of different things with these lanyards. Actually, and I've gone to hundreds of conferences over the years, so I've got way too many of these. I use them in the garden.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, so as ties, or to hold a tree up, or to train a tree.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It works in a tomato patch as well. If you want to pull the plants apart a little bit and give them a little more space, I use them there. You can do, and there are several examples of this on the site, crafts with them. You can weave them. You can use them to make keychains, purses, all sorts of crazy stuff that we've got on the site. And the other thing is there are several programs that you can participate in, such as Terracycle, which has a zero waste box for lanyards and name tags. So you buy this box, you fill it up with the lanyards and name tags and send it back, and they responsibly recycle it. So there are options across the board, depending on how you want to deal with it. I would still say reuse is the best bet, and that which could include any number of practical uses. And then if you want to pay the fee to have the box and have it recycled, that's great, and you should do it. But there are a lot of less expensive ways to do so. And of course, always remember to ask the producers of conferences not to use lanyards made from virgin materials.
Yeah, very good advice. So this next one I thought was kind of interesting. I didn't even know this stuff existed. So Paul in Clifton Park, New York asks, how do we dispose of waste waterjet sand? The sand is garnet that has metal dust and metal fragments in it. It can have aluminum, steel, and stainless steel dust and bits of scrap. So what is the sand used for in a waterjet? Is it part of the engine?
It's what creates the friction.
Oh.
So you blast the sand in a stream of water, and the sand does the work, and the water does the carrying.
I had no idea.
And interestingly, garnet is in the States. You can only find garnet usually as a stone.
Yeah.
It's a semi-precious stone.
Yeah.
Apparently, I did not know this, and I had to learn it in answering the question. There are beaches in Asia that are just garnet beaches.
Really?
Which must be lovely. And so that's where a lot of this garnet comes from.
Really?
And it's mixed in the water, and you blast it, and hopefully catch it as it runs off, right? So and that's what Paul did. He captured all this material. It's soaking wet. It's either picked up in tarps and then put into buckets, or it's captured in buckets immediately. There's a lot of ways to do it. Now, you can take this in and have it handled at a normal transfer station as long as it doesn't contain nickel or chrome.
Okay.
Nickel and chrome are toxic materials, but if you've got steel, aluminum, bits of scrap, those things are normally considered, acceptable at the local transfer station. So it isn't necessary to go somewhere special with this stuff. But what you want to do is make sure you don't take it in when it's wet, because you're going to pay for the weight of the water in addition to the weight of the material. So if you want to recycle or dispose of this responsibly, let it dry, and that would maybe spread it out on a tarp and then pour it back in. That can save you $50, $100 in weight when you go to the transfer station.
Do you think you can use it in building materials, like if you instead of paver sand when you're putting down pavers in the yard?
That's a great question. I think you could probably use it in some sort of composite material.
Yeah, I guess it might depend on what all you have in that sand.
But I wouldn't want to just take the waste and put it in my backyard unless I knew for a fact that it was completely safe. So for instance, if you use it on lead paint, you would not want to use that runoff.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. Well, that's good advice. So our last one is from Kim in Los Angeles, and Kim has some thoughts on pizza boxes. She says, it amazes me that there are so many pizza boxes used every day and we can't recycle most of them. I have observed that some pizza providers use a piece of oil absorption paper underneath the pizza, leaving a mostly oil-free pizza box. However, many restaurants don't, and the ones that do often use papers that are smaller than the pizza, which defeats the purpose. Would one possible solution be to have all pizza restaurants give takeout boxes with an oil-absorbing, box-wide paper underneath the pizza, so this paper is the only thing that must be thrown away or is compostable, leaving the stain-free box to be recycled.
Well, this is a great suggestion, and Kim's right. That would be a good move. It's used in some places, but here's the thing: we're actually getting progress on the recycling of pizza boxes because they are such a big problem. When I was at the ISRI, the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries conference a month and a half ago, there was a gentleman in the pulp discussion who insisted that there is technology now that will allow any pizza box, even greasy ones, to be recycled.
So it sort of breaks it down and washes it somehow to get the oils out?
And then uses heat to separate the oil from the paper, the paper fibers. And remember, this is somebody at a trade show trying to get people to buy something. So
sure.
It's not necessarily always the case.
Right. It may not be easy and cheap. It just may be possible.
It may very well, and in fact is being done in some places. Now, the other thing, there's the interim step is tear the greasy part out and just send the ungreasy part through. But the liner would make that almost a non-issue. You can just take the box and put it away, or put it in the recycling bin. Now, the other thing to consider, and this is something that some food delivery companies are looking at, is reusable packaging too.
Oh, that would be nice.
So, the next time you order from Pizza Hut, they would bring you you would give them back the old box. It might be made of plastic instead of cardboard. Mm-hmm. And we've had several queries just in the last couple of days from people who need to ship fish and other perishables along the way, and they want to figure out how to create a recyclable box. So this is a conversation that a lot of people are thinking about, and what Kim's suggesting is a very simple solution that could be. And I bet you she's thinking about starting a business. That could be easily distributed to pizza makers.
Sure.
How much more is it going to cost them? Is the only question they're going to ask.
Right.
And what do they get out of it? And if people feel better about the pizza. Mm-hmm. That's probably enough for a sheet of paper.
Oh, yeah, I would think so. Well, especially if they're already putting paper down, it's just not very absorbent paper.
Yeah. So, Kim, if you're thinking about doing it, go for it.
I guess the one thing I'd add, too, is if you live in an area where you can put your food waste in with your yard waste for pickup, check with your waste people, because some places will allow you to add some paper and cardboard into your food waste if it's oily.
Yep.
So
that's where you're starting to see that progress.
Yeah. So one last thing before we wrap up, I thought we'd do a quick mention on recent interviews. You recently did a Moses filter interview. What do you want to tell us about that? So
the Moses filter separates debris from the sea. It's I love the biblical reference.
I get it. Parts the sea.
Yeah, it takes a second, but it's a slow joke, but it works.
I would never have gotten that on my own.
So we had Jean-Paul Command, who is the founder of a team who's been working for 5 years in British Columbia to create a plastic street grate. So instead of the 185-pound steel grate that covers your drain, it's a plastic drain with filters in it. So it captures everything that flows through the drain and doesn't let it get into the water below. So that's reducing runoff pollution in the first place. Yeah. Second thing is these can be easily managed by virtually anybody, including citizens, who want to take over and be responsible, say, for a block like you do on the freeway for cleaning it up, to keep these things monitored and replaced. So now you've got an interesting sort of fractional job that people could do to help their community. And the materials used to make the Moses filter are completely recyclable. So and they're made from recycled material. So the idea is to capture everything, including sharps, which are a big problem,
right,
in a way that doesn't hurt the worker who's cleaning the drain, and then to make it easy to take and recycle all that material in a safe way.
Oh, that's great.
And there's another interview that I'd like to point out, too. It's about Helm. And Helm is spelled H-E-L-M-M. It's a new men's antiperspirant and deodorant company out of New York City. And we talked to the founders about how Helm was created, and they're using a UNESCO-certified perfumer to create completely natural ingredients that either suppress sweat or suppress odor. And it comes in this really beautifully designed steel and leather container, and each month or each whatever frequency you want, you get a replacement filler, which comes in a little plastic thing that drops in and snaps in. The plastic thing is also completely recyclable. So it's a really neat product for men that, looks and feels like something that you would buy as a person concerned with fashion. You see, my voice goes up because I'm certainly not concerned with fashion. But I really liked it. And I became a customer myself, so I'm using it. I'm holding it in my hand now.
Good.
That kind of thing.
What does it smell like?
There's four fragrances. I bought the one that smells like the outdoors. It is primarily powered by oil of bergamot.
Oh, nice.
Which has antibacterial qualities. But it smells like forest.
Oh, that's lovely.
And so really interesting conversation, because we talked about the fact that any new product, particularly for millennials and Gen Z, has to be sustainable, even to have a chance to compete.
Isn't that interesting?
So both of those interviews were a lot of fun to do, and it was inspiring to hear both of them taking on completely different approaches to trying to make the world more sustainable.
That's wonderful. Well, anything else from the Earth911 before we wrap up, Mitch?
Just keep your eye on the site. New things are coming all the time. Okay.
Always good to check on what's new. So that's it for this episode. Now, as we've noted, we're always interested in your questions, suggestions, and feedback, especially if you've got deep thoughts on mailers or spam or anything else. You can send an email to feedback@earth911.com, and stay tuned on all of your normal podcasting platforms to listen to our next episode. We'll see you next time.
Take care, everybody.